What if I told you American bison, Mongolian camels and Tibetan yaks were set loose in Russian Siberia, as well as 7 other large mammal species, much of them non-native to the region? Why would anyone, other than a Bond villain, bring large animals from around the world to one of the planet's most hostile environments? Let me explain. In 1989, Russian geophysicist Sergei Zimov and his colleagues set out to restore the biodiversity of their homeland, Yakutia, in Siberian Russia to its former glory, backed by the Yakutian government. For those that don't know, Yakutia is a massive area, similar in size to the whole country of India. Zimov had been working and directing at the Northeast Science Station in Cherski, a station that studied global carbon and methane budgets, as well as animal extinctions that occurred in Siberia as the world transitioned from Pleistocene into the Holocene around 12,000 years ago. Both elements of the station's research would go on to become important in the conception and founding of Pleistocene Park, possibly the world's most ambitious rewilding project. Thanks to research done by Zimov and many others across Yakutia, we have a pretty good understanding of what the region looked like when humans first arrived. There were vast grasslands inhabited by wild horses, steppe bison, reindeer, moose, woolly rhinos, musk oxen and woolly mammoths, being stalked by brown bears, grey wolves, Eurasian lynx and the apex predator, the cave lion. These large animals, and of course a vast array of smaller critters, lived for hundreds of thousands of millennia across an ecosystem known as the mammoth steppe, a cold, arid grassland which at its peak around 23,000 years ago stretched from western France all the way through Eurasia and over the Bering Land Bridge into North America, making it the world's largest biome. The mammoth steppe naturally began to shrink as the glacial maximum ended around 20,000 years ago, glacial maximum being the coldest point of the Ice Age. The world became warmer and wetter, and this coincided with the extinction of much of the mammoth steppe megafauna, a fact that once led scientists to believe the shifting climate caused the extinctions, but that hypothesis comes with some major flaws, many of which are noted by Zimov in this 2005 article. Firstly, the megafauna of the mammoth steppe lived for hundreds of thousands of years and endured several shifts in climate, from glacial to interglacial and back again. As the available habitat, in this case the mammoth steppe, shrank and expanded, so too did their distribution and population. Even today, much of Siberia is colder than the parts of Europe where woolly mammoths and steppe bison once lived. Secondly, though much of Yakutia is tundra today, a moist low fertility biome dominated by mosses, once it is disturbed by herds of grazing animals, it only takes a year or two for it to become grassland. So if the land is still capable of hosting grassland and grazers, why did the mammoth steppe grasslands disappear? Rather than the mammoth steppe disappearing and then the large herbivores as a result, modern science now suggests it was the other way around. The herbivores were wiped out and the grasslands that they sustained soon followed. Grasslands need the soil fertility provided by poop and urine of herbivores, as well as their grazing, to persist in Siberia, and indeed much of the world. The large herbivores of Pleistocene Siberia survived several shifts in climate throughout their existence, but something was different about the shifting climate from 20,000 to 10,000 years ago, because this shift coincided with the establishment of humans across northern Eurasia. At a time when populations and distributions of mammoth steppe megafauna would have been decreasing, they had to deal with an animal they had never yet encountered: us. Modern science leaves us with little doubt as to what, or rather who, caused these extinctions. So, you now know what Yakutia looked like before the extinctions. Zimov himself described it as an Arctic Serengeti, and it did indeed resemble the African Serengeti. Mixed herds of steppe bison and wild horses matched the wildebeest and zebra, and woolly mammoths and woolly rhinos the near hairless African elephants and rhinos. These Serengeti-like grasslands once covered much of the world. Maybe, like me, you are passionate about restoring these vast savannas and seeing them with your own eyes. Perhaps that's something we will see thanks to our partners at Planet Wild, who have supported the recovery of America's vast prairie in an ambitious mission that has been buying up land to rewild and introducing iconic lost species like the American bison. Not just that, they've supported nature restoration on all 6 inhabitable continents, like this Eurasian lynx reintroduction to the Harz Mountains in Germany and this underground forest restoration mission in Tanzania. Planet Wild is an honestly awesome organisation with over 18,000 members worldwide. Every month, the Planet Wild community funds a new mission, from habitat restoration to ocean cleanup, Think of it like crowdfunding for nature. And the really cool part is, you get to see exactly how Planet Wild helps our environment as they document all their missions right here on YouTube. I am a proud Planet Wild member and partner because I long for a world where natural habitats on every continent are growing in size and biodiversity. A world where every one of us has access to complete and healthy ecosystems, and that's exactly what Planet Wild is about. I highly recommend that you too become a member because it is such a cool and entertaining way to support nature restoration. You can sign up for as little as the price of a sandwich or whatever price you're comfortable with. Better again, if you are one of the first 100 to sign up using my code ECOLOGY1, you'll get your first month paid for by me, Ecology Nerd. Just scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to get your discount. There's no catch, you can cancel your membership anytime. Now, back to Siberia. Zimov became obsessed with the Arctic Serengeti, and so he set out to restore it. He concocted an ambitious plan to establish a vast nature reserve and reintroduce large herbivores to restore the grassland steppe. His plan was approved by the Yakutian government, and he was placed in charge of a whopping 160 square kilometers of land, which he named Pleistocene Park. The priority of the park is to restore the biodiversity of the mammoth steppe, but there is a secondary goal, even more important than this, which we'll discuss later. Despite the extinctions of many large animals, many others remained in Yakutia. Moose and reindeer were already present, as were wolves, lynx, wolverines and brown bears, though all are in rather low densities due to the low productivity of the landscape and hunting pressure from humans. Many smaller species like Arctic foxes, marmots and mountain hares are also present in the park. Pleistocene Park needed lots of large grazers to restore the grasslands at scale though, and so in 1996 Zimov purchased 40 Yakutian horses, a breed native to the region, and set them loose in the park. Sadly, 15 of these horses were taken by predators, but Zimov learned from this and fenced off a section of the park to protect the horses and any future introduced herbivores from predation, allowing their populations to rise and adapt to living in the wild, while still hoping to allow predators into the park in the future. Zimov even plans to reintroduce big cats, but we'll get to that later. Today this fenced section has grown to cover about 20 square kilometers. The next reintroductions were some reindeer that Zimov and his son Nikita purchased and some moose calves, brought in to supplement the small number that were already present in the park. Local horses, reindeer and moose were easy introductions though, but getting other herbivores was more difficult. Pleistocene Park is very remote, and to obtain animals means a combination of truck and boat trips, some of which aren't possible at certain times of year. The Zimovs were also financing this themselves on a shoestring budget. The other issue is the harsh climate of the park. Winter temperatures can get below minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is also minus 40 Fahrenheit. The animals have to be able to withstand the cold and to dig beneath snow to access and eat frozen vegetation. Nonetheless, over the last 15 years, many species have been introduced to the park. There were some failed introductions, including 6 wapiti, known as elk in North America, that escaped almost immediately after arriving in the park, and 5 European bison, of which all the females died out in the severe climate. Thankfully, with each mishap, the Zimovs learned. Importantly, any introduced animals are now kept very close and given shelter and fodder to help them acclimatise, before gradually giving them more freedom and less care as time progresses. They have now successfully introduced musk oxen, Kalmykian cattle, Edelweiss sheep, Orenburg fur goats, domestic yaks, American bison and Bactrian camels. Aside from musk oxen, none of these are native to Yakutia. To some who are aware of the risks of non-native species introductions, this might ring some alarm bells, but I explain why it shouldn't in this case in the video on screen, so I won't go over that again here, but I'll link the video in at the end. For the first 21 years of the park's existence, they only managed to introduce 1 new species, but over the past 15 years, they've successfully introduced 7 new species, thanks to growing international interest and the public funding that came with it. The animals are actively breeding and introductions are ongoing, with 15 more musk oxen being introduced as recently as September 2025. Herbivore numbers are on the rise, and you should all be glad of this, because they have a very important job, which brings us to the park's secondary goal. Under the active soil layer at Pleistocene Park, there is something called permafrost. Permafrost is a layer of soil and other material that remains permanently frozen. In much of the Arctic and subarctic, the soil rests atop a layer of permafrost. This permafrost holds more than twice the amount of carbon stored in all the world's rainforests combined. Unfortunately, the world's permafrost has been thawing and releasing vast amounts of carbon and also methane into the atmosphere, greatly speeding up the greenhouse effect. Without large grazing herbivores in the Arctic, a deep layer of snow builds up in the winter. This snow actually acts as an insulating blanket for the soil, allowing the soil to retain the warmth it had built up over the summer months. When the snow then melts, the soil is at a higher temperature than it should have been naturally, meaning there is a longer and more severe period of permafrost thaw. When herbivores are present though, to access vegetation, they trample and compress this winter snow, exposing the soil to the freezing temperatures, preventing the permafrost from thawing and even allowing for the creation of more permafrost. Grasslands, being more productive than tundra and boreal forest, sequester more carbon than those biomes as well. As grasslands are lighter in colour, they also reflect more of the sun's heat through what is known as the albedo effect, meaning the herbivores' grassland creating actions help combat climate change by 3 different means. So, the herbivores of Pleistocene Park are of great importance. Eventually though, for Pleistocene Park to be restored to mammoth steppe biodiversity levels, they will need to allow predators into the park. For lynx, bears, wolverines and wolves, it's just a matter of allowing them in. But the Zimovs also want a big cat as proxy for the extinct cave lion. In Sergei Zimov's 2005 article, he states that introducing Siberian tigers is an important phase of the program, while in this podcast episode, Nikita says he would prefer to introduce lions. Introducing either comes with great difficulty though. Siberian tigers are certainly better able to withstand the cold. In parts of their range, they encounter temperatures as low as -30 Celsius, -22 Fahrenheit, not quite the lows of -40 at Pleistocene Park, but it's likely if given shelter and food in harsh times, they would eventually adapt. They are solitary hunters though, unlike cave lions, meaning tigers don't hunt large prey as often, so they aren't a perfect proxy. Modern lions then are very closely related to cave lions, often even considered the same species, and likely share a similar ecology. But lions taken from Africa or India would not automatically survive in the Arctic, even if they are closely related to cave lions. Indian wolves and Arctic wolves are the same species, and yet if Indian wolves were let loose in the Arctic winter, they'd succumb to the elements almost immediately. Lions in captivity do grow thicker coats in winter, and so lions can probably withstand colder climates than they do in Africa or India, but it would take generations for them to adapt to the cold that animals experience in Yakutia. So despite the difference in ecology, Siberian tigers might be a more practical introduction. Pleistocene Park is perhaps the most important and exciting rewilding project in the world. The research being done there on the effects large herbivores have on climate change, ecosystem shaping and biodiversity are vital to our future. There is tons of information on Pleistocene Park on their website and also their social media channels, so definitely check those out. If you have any Pleistocene Park information you feel I should have included in this video, let me know in the comments below. Remember to check out Planet Wild and the amazing work they're doing. If you'd like to see them in action, you can watch their mission restoring America's Wild West right here. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel to help it grow. Thank you, as always, for watching.